You missed a spot. Serena looked up from the marble floor she had been polishing for 20 minutes. Vivian Ashworth stood above her, champagne flute in hand, silk robe draped across her shoulders like she owned the sunrise. Where? Vivian smiled. Then she tilted the glass and poured the champagne directly onto the section Serena had just finished cleaning. There. The liquid pooled across the marble, golden and deliberate. 3 members of the household staff watched from the doorway. No one moved. No one spoke. Serena held Vivian's gaze for exactly 2 seconds. Then she reached for her cloth and began wiping again. Vivian Ashworth had no idea that the woman kneeling before her had signed a marriage certificate with Adrian Cross 4 months ago. She had no idea that the maid she was humiliating owned more legal rights to this mansion than she ever would. And she certainly had no idea that every act of cruelty she committed was being carefully documented for the moment it would destroy her completely. Hello, and welcome to her drama tales. Your place for stories that prove the people who look down on you rarely see what's rising beneath them. If you believe that true power never needs to announce itself, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a moment of the drama. The Cross estate occupied 12 acres on the outskirts of the city, hidden behind iron gates and centuries-old oak trees that had witnessed 3 generations of wealth accumulate and multiply. Adrian Cross, the current heir, had inherited the property at 27 when his father passed unexpectedly. Along with the mansion came the family foundation, a philanthropic institution worth several $100 million, governed by a board of trustees who answered, ultimately, to Adrian alone. Vivian Ashworth had entered his life 18 months earlier at a charity function. She was polished, ambitious, and fluent in the language of old money. Within 6 months, she had positioned herself as Adrian's public partner. Within 12, she had secured an engagement ring and begun referring to the mansion as our home. But Vivian wanted more than marriage. She wanted control. The foundation was her real target. Its board seats, its influence, its access to networks that could elevate her family from wealthy to untouchable. Her father, Richard Ashworth, had spent decades building a reputation as a dealmaker, but beneath the surface, his methods were predatory. Hostile takeovers disguised as partnerships, reputations destroyed through calculated leaks, families ruined while he smiled for photographs. Serena Vance knew this intimately, because Richard Ashworth had destroyed her father using those exact methods. 8 years earlier, David Vance had been a respected businessman with a growing manufacturing company. Richard Ashworth had approached him with an investment proposal, capital in exchange for equity and board representation. Within 2 years, Ashworth had manipulated the board, diluted David's shares, and orchestrated a scandal that accused him of financial misconduct. The accusations were false, but by the time the truth emerged, it was too late. David Vance died 6 months after losing everything, his heart giving out under the weight of public disgrace. Serena was 19 when she buried her father. She spent the next 8 years rebuilding, quietly, strategically, with the patience of someone who understood that revenge required more than anger. It required proof. When she discovered that Vivian Ashworth was engaged to Adrian Cross, she recognized the pattern immediately. The same playbook, the same approach. A marriage designed not for love but for access to the foundation, to the board, to institutional power that could be leveraged for decades. She approached Adrian privately with her evidence. He listened. He verified. And then he made her an offer. They married in a civil ceremony with 2 witnesses and no announcement. The certificate was filed, sealed, and hidden. As far as the world knew, Adrian Cross was still engaged to Vivian Ashworth. But legally, he already had a wife. And that wife was about to enter the mansion as a maid. The first week was observation. Serena learned the rhythms of the household, which staff members reported directly to Vivian, which rooms were monitored by cameras, which hours the foundation files were accessed from Adrian's study. She memorized schedules, noted inconsistencies, and kept her head down while Vivian paraded through the halls like a woman rehearsing for a throne. Vivian treated staff the way certain people treat furniture. Useful when needed, invisible otherwise, and disposable the moment they showed signs of wear. She snapped at housekeepers for folding towels incorrectly. She berated the cook for serving breakfast 3 minutes late. She once made a gardener redo an entire flower arrangement because the roses were too pink. But her particular fixation on Serena began almost immediately. Something about the new maid unsettled her. Serena didn't flinch when spoken to harshly. She didn't apologize excessively or avoid eye contact. She simply completed her tasks with a calm efficiency that felt, to Vivian, almost like defiance. "You're very quiet," Vivian observed one morning, watching Serena dust the library shelves. "I prefer listening." "To what? The furniture?" "To everything." Vivian's eyes narrowed. She wasn't accustomed to staff who responded with anything other than submission. This one had a stillness that felt like resistance, and resistance was something Vivian could not tolerate. The escalation began slowly. First, additional duties. Serena was assigned to clean rooms that had already been cleaned, to reorganize closets that didn't need reorganizing, to perform tasks designed not for utility but for humiliation. Then came the public degradation. Vivian would summon Serena during lunches with friends, pointing out imaginary stains on her uniform, criticizing her posture, making her stand in corners like a child being punished. "She's simple," Vivian explained to her guests, gesturing toward Serena with her wine glass. "But she works hard. You have to appreciate the effort, even when the results are mediocre." The guests laughed. Serena remained motionless. Vivian interpreted the stillness as submission. She had no way of knowing it was documentation. Every slight catalogued, every witness noted, every pattern recorded for the case being built in silence. Adrian watched from a distance. Their arrangement required separation. If Vivian suspected any connection between Adrian and the new maid, the entire operation would collapse. So Adrian maintained his role as the distracted fiancé, appearing in public with Vivian while communicating with Serena through encrypted messages and brief encounters in parts of the mansion the cameras didn't reach. But distance had a cost. He saw the champagne incident from his study window. He watched Vivian pour the liquid onto the floor Serena had just cleaned, watched his legal wife kneel and wipe it away without protest. His jaw tightened. His hands curled into fists at his sides. He didn't intervene. The strategy required patience. They needed Vivian to overreach, to make mistakes that couldn't be explained away, to generate evidence so damning that no amount of social manipulation could save her. One premature revelation would sacrifice everything they had built. But watching Serena absorb that humiliation, watching her dignity be tested while he stood behind glass doing nothing, carved something out of Adrian that he wouldn't fully understand until much later. He was choosing the perfect moment over immediate protection. And that choice would eventually cost him more than he anticipated. The engagement dinner arrived 3 weeks into Serena's placement. It was meant to be an intimate gathering, Adrian's extended family, a few foundation board members, and Vivian's parents. A celebration of the upcoming wedding, scheduled for the following spring. Vivian had spent days orchestrating every detail, determined to present herself as the gracious future mistress of the Cross estate. Serena was assigned to serve drinks. She moved through the gathering with practiced invisibility, refilling glasses, clearing plates, absorbing conversations that the guests assumed no servant would remember. Richard Ashworth was there, holding court near the fireplace, his voice carrying the particular confidence of a man who had never faced consequences. "The foundation restructuring will happen naturally after the wedding," he was saying to a board member. "Once Vivian is officially family, her involvement becomes expected. Organic. And the current governance structure? Flexible. Adrian is manageable. He cares about legacy, not operations. We simply redirect that energy toward ceremonial duties while the real decisions happen elsewhere." Serena filed the words away. More evidence. More proof. The pattern her father had warned her about, repeating itself in a different generation. The confrontation happened near the end of the evening. Serena was carrying a tray of desserts when Vivian intercepted her near the dining room entrance. "Those napkins are folded incorrectly." Serena looked at the napkins. They were folded precisely according to the housekeeper's instructions. "I can refold them if you prefer. I prefer that you learn to do things correctly the first time." Vivian's voice rose slightly, attracting attention from nearby guests. "This is exactly what I mean about the staff here. No attention to detail. No standards." Richard Ashworth drifted closer, watching with amusement. Several board members paused their conversations. Vivian reached for the tray, her movements sharp with performative frustration. Her hand caught the edge, and the dessert slid, tumbling toward the floor. Serena caught the tray. Every single dessert remained in place. The room went quiet. Vivian's face flushed. She had expected a mess, a spectacle, something she could use to justify terminating this unsettling maid in front of witnesses. Instead, she was the one who looked clumsy while the servant remained composed. "Remove her," Vivian snapped, turning to Adrian. "I want her out of this house tonight." Adrian set down his glass and walked toward them. The room held its breath. "That won't be happening." Vivian blinked. "Excuse me?" "I said no." Adrian's voice was calm but absolute. "The staff answers to me, Vivian. Not to you. You're a guest in this house until you're a wife. And even then, you don't dismiss employees because they embarrassed you." The silence that followed was suffocating. Richard Ashworth's expression shifted from amusement to calculation. The board members exchanged glances. Vivian's composure cracked, just slightly, before she recovered with a brittle smile. "Of course, darling. I was only thinking of standards." "The standards are fine." Adrian turned to Serena. "Please continue serving." Serena nodded and returned to her duties. But something had shifted in the room's atmosphere. Vivian had been publicly corrected. Her authority had been undermined. And in the world she inhabited, that kind of humiliation required retaliation. The engagement dinner marked the beginning of the final phase. Vivian's behavior deteriorated rapidly over the following days. She couldn't fire Serena, but she could make her existence unbearable. The assignments became deliberately degrading. Scrubbing bathroom floors on hands and knees while Vivian supervised, cleaning windows in the rain, being summoned at odd hours for tasks that could easily wait until morning. But beneath the cruelty, Vivian was also becoming reckless. She began holding private meetings in Adrian's study while he was away. Foundation documents appeared on desks where they shouldn't be. Phone calls with her father grew longer, more urgent, their voices dropping to whispers whenever staff approached. Serena documented everything. She photographed documents through partially open doors. She noted timestamps and visitor logs. She recorded conversations using equipment hidden in her uniform. Tiny devices that captured every word Vivian believed was private. The evidence accumulated, proof of coordinated planning, of board manipulation attempts, of a systematic effort to use the marriage as a vehicle for institutional takeover. Richard Ashworth's fingerprints were everywhere, his methods identical to the ones that had destroyed Serena's father. One evening, Serena found herself alone in the East Wing corridor when Vivian appeared unexpectedly. "You think you're clever, don't you?" Serena turned. "I think I'm doing my job." "Your job is to be invisible. But you're not invisible, are you? You're always watching. Always listening." Vivian stepped closer. "I don't know what you're playing at, but I know something isn't right about you. Perhaps you're imagining things." "I don't imagine things. I observe them." Vivian's eyes narrowed. "Adrian defended you at dinner. He's never defended staff before. Why would he start now? You'd have to ask him." "I'm asking you." Serena met her gaze without flinching. "I polish floors and fold napkins. I don't know why your fiancé does anything. That's above my pay grade." For a long moment they stood in silence, two women who understood, on some level, that they were playing a game far larger than either acknowledged. Then Vivian smiled, cold and sharp. "Enjoy your position while it lasts. After the wedding, I'll be making changes. Significant ones." She walked away, her heels echoing against the marble. Serena exhaled slowly. The timeline was accelerating. Whatever they were planning needed to happen soon, before Vivian's suspicions crystallized into something more dangerous. The Foundation Gala was scheduled for Saturday evening. It was the social event of the season, 300 guests, black tie, extensive press coverage. Officially, it celebrated the Foundation's anniversary and announced new philanthropic initiatives. Unofficially, everyone understood it would serve as Vivian's coronation, her formal introduction to society as Adrian Cross's future wife. Vivian had been preparing for weeks. The gown, the jewelry, the carefully rehearsed speech about carrying on the Cross legacy. Everything was designed to cement her position before anyone could question it. She had no idea that the gala would become her destruction. Adrian and Serena met privately the night before, in a garden alcove where the security cameras had convenient blind spots. "The evidence is complete," Serena said quietly. "Financial records, recorded conversations, documented meetings. Richard Ashworth's involvement is provable. The board manipulation attempts are on record. We have everything we need." Adrian nodded. "The legal team reviewed the files today. They're prepared to present tomorrow." "During the gala?" "During the gala." He paused. "Are you ready for what comes after?" Serena considered the question. For 8 years, she had been building toward this moment, the exposure of the people who had destroyed her father, the vindication of his name, the proof that he had been innocent all along. But readiness was complicated. She had also spent weeks being humiliated, degraded, treated as less than human by a woman who would never face those consequences if Serena walked away now. "I'm ready," she said. Adrian reached for her hand. "Serena, don't." She pulled back gently. "We can talk about us after. Right now, I need to focus on finishing this." He nodded, but something flickered in his expression, the recognition that finishing this might not include him. The gala transformed the Cross estate into something from a film. Crystal chandeliers blazed above the ballroom. Orchestral music drifted through halls decorated with cascading flowers and candlelight. 300 of the city's most influential figures circulated in evening wear, their laughter and conversation creating a steady hum of affluent contentment. Vivian entered on Adrian's arm, resplendent in an ivory gown that cost more than most people earned in a year. Photographers captured her arrival. Guests offered congratulations. Richard Ashworth beamed from across the room, his daughter's success reflecting his own ambitions. Serena watched from the service corridor, still dressed in her maid's uniform. Beneath the plain fabric, she wore something different, a simple but elegant dress she had brought with her, hidden under the servant's outer layer. When the moment came, she would shed the costume that Vivian had used as a weapon and stand before the room as who she truly was. But first, the exposure. The evening proceeded according to schedule. Speeches about the foundation's achievements. Acknowledgements of major donors. A video presentation highlighting charitable initiatives around the world. Then Adrian took the microphone. "Thank you all for being here tonight," he began, his voice carrying across the silent ballroom. "This foundation represents 3 generations of my family's commitment to creating positive change. My grandfather built it. My father expanded it. And now it falls to me to protect it." He paused. Protect it from those who would use it for personal gain. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Vivian's smile faltered almost imperceptibly. "Over the past several months, I've become aware of a coordinated effort to manipulate this foundation's governance through my personal relationships. An effort led by individuals in this room tonight." The murmur became a rumble. Heads turned. Phones appeared. Adrian gestured, and a screen descended behind him. Documents appeared. Financial records, board correspondence, recorded conversations with timestamps and transcripts. These materials demonstrate a systematic plan to use an engagement as a vehicle for institutional control. They show meetings, payments, and communications designed to position certain individuals for board access and decision-making authority they were never entitled to hold. Vivian's face drained of color. Richard Ashworth was already moving toward the exit, but security personnel blocked his path. The individuals responsible are Vivian Ashworth and her father, Richard Ashworth. The ballroom erupted. Cameras flashed. Voices rose. Vivian stood frozen, her ivory gown suddenly looking less like bridal elegance and more like a costume for a performance that had just been cancelled. "Furthermore," Adrian continued, raising his hand for quiet, "I need to clarify a legal matter that some of you may find relevant." He nodded toward the service corridor. Serena stepped forward. 300 pairs of eyes turned toward the maid walking across the ballroom floor. Vivian's expression shifted from shock to confusion to something approaching horror. "This is Serena Vance," Adrian said. "4 months ago, in a private civil ceremony, she became my wife." The room went absolutely silent. The engagement to Vivian Ashworth was never legally valid because I was already married. This was done deliberately to prevent exactly what these documents describe: a hostile takeover of my family's foundation through marriage. Serena reached the center of the ballroom and stopped. She looked at Vivian, at the woman who had poured champagne on her floors, who had called her simple, who had assigned her degrading tasks designed to break her spirit. Then she removed the maid's apron and outer uniform. Beneath it was the dress she had hidden, simple, elegant, unmistakably expensive. Not a costume, not a disguise, just a woman standing in her truth. "You poured water on my work," Serena said quietly, her voice carrying in the stunned silence. "You made me kneel while you laughed with your friends. You told everyone I was mediocre, simple, disposable." She stepped closer to Vivian. "But I was never any of those things. I was the one documenting every conversation you thought was private. I was the one photographing every document you thought was hidden. I was the one building the case that just ended your future." Vivian's mouth opened, but no sound emerged. "My father was David Vance. Your father destroyed him with lies 8 years ago. the same way you tried to destroy this foundation. He died believing the world thought he was a fraud. Serena's voice didn't waver. Tonight, the world will know the truth about both of them. Richard Ashworth was shouting now, demanding lawyers, threatening lawsuits. Security personnel escorted him toward a side room where legal representatives waited with additional documentation. Vivian finally found her voice. This is a setup. A conspiracy. Adrian, tell them. Tell them what? Adrian's tone was cold. That you didn't spend 18 months trying to manipulate your way onto my foundation's board? That you didn't coordinate with your father to repeat the exact scheme that destroyed innocent people? That you didn't treat my wife like garbage because you thought she was beneath you? Vivian's composure collapsed entirely. Tears streamed down her face, smearing makeup that had been applied with such care hours earlier. Her perfect gown wrinkled as she clutched at fabric like a woman drowning. I didn't know, she whispered. How was I supposed to know? You weren't supposed to know, Serena replied. That was the point. Security approached Vivian, gently but firmly guiding her toward the same side room where her father waited. The gala guests parted like water, no one willing to be associated with the woman who had just been exposed in front of everyone who mattered. The doors closed behind her. The silence stretched for 3 long seconds. Then Adrian addressed the room once more. The foundation will continue its work under new governance safeguards. Legal proceedings regarding the Ashworth family will begin Monday. This gala will continue as planned because our mission doesn't pause for the misconduct of individuals who tried to corrupt it. He raised his glass. To integrity, and to the people who protect it, even when no one is watching. The room slowly returned to motion. Conversations resumed, though the tone had shifted dramatically. Photographers captured images that would dominate headlines for weeks. Board members huddled in corners, already discussing governance reforms. Serena stood in the center of it all, finally visible, finally acknowledged, finally free of the costume that had defined her for weeks. But she wasn't celebrating. Adrian found her on the terrace an hour later. The gala continued inside, but Serena had slipped away, needing air, needing space, needing something she couldn't quite name. The evening had unfolded exactly as planned. Vivian was destroyed. Richard Ashworth faced criminal investigation. Her father's name would be cleared in the press coverage that followed. She had won. So why did victory feel so hollow? You were magnificent, Adrian said, joining her at the railing. I was accurate. There's a difference. He was quiet for a moment. Serena, I know the past few weeks were brutal. Watching what she did to you, not being able to stop it. You could have stopped it. The words hung between them, heavier than the evening air. You could have ended it any time, Serena continued. One word from you, and she would have been gone. Instead, you waited. You calculated. You let her humiliate me because you needed more evidence, more proof, a cleaner case. The strategy required me to kneel on marble floors while a woman poured champagne on my work. The strategy required me to stand in corners while she called me simple in front of her friends. The strategy required my dignity, Adrian. And you spend it like currency. His expression shifted, not defensive but pained. The pain of a man recognizing a truth he had been avoiding. I thought you understood. I thought we were partners in this. We were partners in exposing her. We were never partners in how much I was supposed to endure while you stood behind windows deciding when the timing was right. The terrace fell silent except for distant music drifting through the doors. What do you want me to say? Adrian asked quietly. I want you to understand that there's a difference between protecting someone and protecting a strategy. You chose the strategy. Every single time, you chose the strategy. I chose justice. For your father. For the foundation. For everyone except me in that moment. Serena turned to face him. You got what you needed, Adrian. The evidence was perfect. The exposure was complete. Your foundation is safe. But somewhere along the way, you forgot that I wasn't just a piece on your board. I was your wife. The word landed between them with unexpected weight. I still am, she added. Legally. But I'm not sure that means what it should. Adrian reached for her hand. She didn't pull away, but she didn't lean in either. Tell me how to fix this. I don't know if you can. Her voice wasn't angry. It was tired. You showed me who you become when the stakes are high enough. You become someone who can watch the woman he married be degraded and decide the timing isn't right to stop it. That's not a flaw I can argue you out of. That's who you are. That's not fair. Neither was any of this. She withdrew her hand gently. I'm going to leave tonight. I have a room at a hotel downtown. The lawyers can handle the paperwork. Serena, I came here to clear my father's name and stop the people who destroyed him. I did that. Everything else, she paused, searching for words that didn't exist. Everything else was supposed to be different. I thought working together meant being protected together. I was wrong. She walked toward the terrace doors, then stopped and turned back. You'll find someone else. Someone who fits better into your world, who understands your calculations, who doesn't mind being a variable in your equations. I hope she makes you happy. I hope you make each other happy. I don't want someone else. Then learn what it means to choose a person over a plan. Because until you do, you'll keep losing the people who matter most. She walked inside, through the gala still buzzing with scandal and revelation, past the photographers and the board members and the guests who had just witnessed the most dramatic social collapse in a decade. She didn't look back. The aftermath unfolded over weeks. Vivian Ashworth disappeared from public life entirely. Her social media went dark. Her friends stopped returning calls. The engagement ring was returned through lawyers who communicated exclusively in formal correspondence. Richard Ashworth faced criminal charges related to the original scheme that destroyed David Vance, as well as the attempted foundation manipulation. The evidence was overwhelming. His reputation collapsed faster than his legal defenses. The press covered the gala extensively. Headlines focused on the dramatic exposure, the secret marriage, the maid who turned out to be the wife. Serena's photograph appeared everywhere. The image of her removing the servant's uniform to reveal the dress beneath became iconic, shared across platforms as a symbol of hidden strength and patient justice. But Serena didn't give interviews. She didn't capitalize on the attention. She simply released a statement through her lawyers. 8 years ago, my father died believing the world thought he was a fraud. Tonight, the truth is finally public. David Vance was innocent. The people who destroyed him have been exposed. I have nothing more to add. The divorce papers were filed 30 days after the gala. Irreconcilable differences. No contest. Clean and final. Adrian signed without argument. He had tried calling, texting, sending handwritten letters that said everything he should have said while Serena was still reachable. She didn't respond to any of them. Some lessons arrived too late to change anything except the future. 3 months later, Serena stood on the balcony of a small apartment in another city entirely. She had used part of her inheritance to start over, not extravagantly, but comfortably. A new job in a field unrelated to foundations or mansions or schemes. New friends who knew nothing about galas or exposures or the weeks she had spent wearing a maid's uniform in a house that should have been hers. The headlines had faded. The attention had moved on. The story had become another piece of social history, discussed in podcasts and retrospectives, analyzed by commentators who had never met any of the people involved. Serena didn't mind being forgotten. She had never wanted fame. She had wanted justice, and she had gotten it. But sometimes late at night, she thought about Adrian. Not with longing, exactly. Not with regret. More with the melancholy that accompanies relationships that could have been something but weren't. Because the people involved made choices that revealed incompatibilities too fundamental to overcome. He had been brilliant, strategic, capable of seeing patterns that others missed. But he had also been willing to let her suffer for the sake of timing. And that willingness, however rational, however justified by results, was something she could not live with. Some wounds were too deep to heal with apologies. Some trust, once broken, stayed broken no matter how much time passed. She had cleared her father's name. She had stopped the people who destroyed him. She had walked away from a marriage that couldn't survive its own foundation. And now she was building something new. Something entirely her own. The apartment was quiet. The city hummed below. The evening light painted shadows across the floor, golden and fleeting. Serena picked up a photograph from her desk. Her father, smiling, taken years before everything fell apart. She had carried it with her through every phase of the journey, a reminder of why she had endured what she endured. I did it, she said softly. They know the truth now. Everyone knows. The photograph didn't respond. Photographs never did. But something in her chest loosened anyway, a tension she had carried so long she had forgotten it existed. She set the frame down and walked to the window. Somewhere out there, Vivian Ashworth was learning what it meant to be invisible. Richard Ashworth was preparing for a trial he couldn't win. Adrian Cross was sitting in a mansion that felt emptier than it ever had. And here, in a modest apartment with no staff and no schemes and no one watching, Serena Vance was finally free. Not because someone had rescued her. Not because the world had suddenly become fair. But because she had carried the weight long enough to set it down on her own terms. The woman they dismissed as a maid had been the architect of their collapse all along. The woman they treated as invisible had been watching, waiting, documenting every moment until the truth became undeniable. And now that woman was walking away, not as a victim, not as a trophy, but as someone who had proven that dignity cannot be poured away with champagne, that worth cannot be measured by uniforms, that the quietest person in the room is often the one holding the most dangerous cards. They say that people reveal themselves through how they treat those they consider beneath them. Vivian Ashworth revealed herself with every cruel word, every degrading task, every glass of champagne poured onto freshly polished floors. She believed power meant making others feel small. She was wrong. Power is knowing exactly who you are, even when the world insists you're nothing. Power is patience sharp enough to cut through arrogance. Power is walking into a ballroom dressed as a servant and walking out as the one who changed everything. Serena Vance understood this from the beginning. That's why she won. Not because she was louder, richer, or someone saved her at the last moment, but because she stayed steady while everyone around her underestimated the woman with the mop, the cloth, the quiet eyes that missed nothing. The maid was never just a maid, and the people who poured water on her work never saw the flood coming.